Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Josh Strife Hayes, and this is a complete beginner's guide to the tabletop battle game Warhammer 40k. This guide series will cover everything you need to know to begin playing, from a brief overview of the armies, to modelling and painting, and finally, the game itself. In this video, we'll be looking at and explaining the datasheet of a model, which tells you what it can do in the actual game. Now we're moving into the gameplay side of things, you'll need a few things first. You'll need two essential books. The first is a copy of the Warhammer 40k 8th edition rules, and the second is the codex for your specific army. A codex is a collection of history, lore and stories all about that army, and then every datasheet for every model they can use, letting you know exactly what your chosen army is capable of doing. Then you'll need a tape measure and some 6-sided regular dice. In most games that use dice, you can shorten the style of dice to the letter D, then the number of sides it has. So whenever I say D6, I mean roll a dice with 6 sides. If you need to roll more than one, you'll say the amount to be rolled first. So 5d6 means roll 5 dice, each of them having 6 sides. If you're ever asked to roll a d3, that's a 3-sided dice, roll a regular d6, halve the result, and then round up. There's a quick conversion table on the screen now. Right, with rulebook, codex, tape measure, and dice in hand, we can start to learn how to play Warhammer 40k. The next few videos are where things might get a little bit confusing, because each video requires knowledge of the other video to make any sense. A datasheet will tell you everything that a unit and model can do, but you won't know where or when it can do this until you know the phases of a turn. You won't be able to understand the phases of a turn until you've built an army, and you won't be able to build an army until you understand the datasheet. It's a cycle that's hard to break into. We're going to start with the datasheet. This will explain every single thing a model or unit can do on the battlefield and how they can affect your army. Don't worry though. Every time information on a datasheet becomes relevant later, I will refer back to it. So if you forget something from this video, or can't quite understand how it affects the game, I will be referring to it when we play a test game. For now, we're just going to go through all the information contained on a Space Marine datasheet, and I'll explain how and when you will need to use it. Here we go. This is a datasheet, a table containing all the stuff you need to know about your models. In the top left-hand corner, you'll see a symbol. This shows you what battlefield role this model or unit of models fills. There are 9 battlefield roles. They are HQ, shown by a skull. Troops, shown by a right-facing triangle. Elites, shown by a skull with 4 walls around it. Fast attack is a lightning bolt. Heavy support is shown by an explosion. Dedicated transports are shown by a skull inside an upward-pointing arrow. Flyers are shown by a winged sword. Fortifications are the tower symbol. And the Lord of War, shown by a closed gauntlet. These roles will matter when we build a battle-forged army in the next video. To the right of the battlefield role is the power level of this unit. By adding the total power levels of all units in your army together, you'll have a base level of how powerful your entire force actually is. You can use this to compare it to a friend's force and see if you'd be on roughly equal footing. The name of the unit is listed at the top. Note this is a tactical squad, but may contain 2 specific models inside it, the Space Marine and the Space Marine Sergeant. Let's look at what these models can do. This table here lists all the in-game attributes. M stands for movement, how far in inches this unit can move during the movement phase. WS is weapon skill. This shows how skilled the model is at fighting hand-to-hand in melee combat with the enemy. Think of it like this. If this model is so close to an enemy he can't aim, so he decides to just club the enemy to death with his gun, this is how good he would be at it. You can see it says 3+. This means if you roll a d6, you need to roll 3 or more to succeed. The lower this number is, the better, as you'll be more likely to succeed. A skill of 6+ would be bad, as you'd only have a 1 in 6 chance of rolling it. In Warhammer 40k, rolling a 1 is always a failure in tests and checks. No matter what your modifiers are, a 1 will fail. BS is ballistic skill, and shows how likely this model is to hit their enemy if they fire at it with their weapons. Consider it how accurate this model is at firing their actual gun. Again, it's 3+ for a Space Marine. S stands for strength. This number is the strength of the model and not of the weapon they're firing. That comes later. The strength of a model is how hard they would be able to punch you if they were close enough to do that. T is toughness, how hardy or resilient this model is. A higher toughness will make it harder for the enemy to hurt you, and you'll be able to shrug off otherwise fatal blows. 4 is a standard toughness. This number can range from low numbers like 2 or 3 up to massive numbers like 14 or 15. W is wounds, how much damage this model is able to take before dying. A humble Space Marine only has 1, so any damage at all will kill it. Larger monsters or vehicles can sometimes have over 20. The more wounds you have, the longer you'll be able to survive on the battlefield. A is for attacks, but again for the model, not the weapon. This number shows how many attacks this model can make in a fistfight while in melee range. If strength was how hard this model could punch you, attacks is how many times they'd be able to. A Space Marine has 1 melee attack per turn. However, a Sergeant has 2. LD is leadership. The battlefields of the 40k universe are a scary place, and as your brothers die around you, the temptation to run away grows more and more. At the end of the turn, you may be required to make a morale test. This test will use your leadership value, so the higher this value is, the better. A Space Marine Sergeant has a higher leadership than a regular Marine, meaning if this unit is required to take a morale test, and this unit contains a Sergeant, they can use the higher value instead. SV means save, and shows how effective this model's armour is at stopping enemy damage. In 40k, it's almost guaranteed every model will get hit by a bullet, missile, or claw at some point, but that's why they wear armour. If the enemy has made an attack that is both accurate and past your toughness so will wound you, you have a final chance to rely on your armour to stop the damage. This save stat shows you the number you'll need to roll on a d6 to negate the incoming damage. Under the stats table, you'll see the standard composition and equipment of the squad. In this case, this unit contains 1 Space Marine Sergeant and 4 Space Marines. It can include up to 5 additional Space Marines. But if you do this, the power rating of the entire unit goes up by 4. Each model is armed with a bolt gun, bolt pistol, frag grenades, and crack grenades. The armoury of your specific army will be listed in your codex and detail every weapon or relic you could possibly have. Now let's continue with the datasheet. Next we have the information of the weapons this unit can use. The weapon's name will be listed, then the range. This is how far in inches this weapon can shoot during the shooting phase. Next we have the type of weapon. There are 5 major types of ranged weapons. Assault. Assault weapons can be fired even if the unit advanced in the movement phase, although they will incur a small accuracy penalty. Heavy. Heavy weapons will receive an accuracy penalty if the model moved at all in the previous movement phase. Rapid fire. Rapid fire weapons may double the number of shots they make against enemies within half of their maximum range. Grenade. Each time a unit shoots, a single model within that unit may choose to throw a grenade instead of firing any other weapon. And pistol. A pistol is the only type of ranged weapon that may also be fired while in melee combat. If you do choose to shoot a pistol, you cannot fire any other weapons for that model this turn. After the weapon type will be a number. This is the amount of shots this weapon makes when being fired. For example, the second weapon, the bolt gun, is a rapid-fire one weapon with a range of 24 inches. This means when shooting at an enemy, you'll make one shot, unless you're within 12 inches, because then rapid-fire will apply, half range, and you'll make two instead. Remember, I'll be bringing all of this up again when it's relevant. Don't get too intimidated by the complexity yet. Underneath, you'll see the table and numbers for the weapons stats themselves. S is again strength, but this time for the strength of the weapon. This number tells you how powerful the weapon is. The higher this number, the more likely it is to hurt you. AP stands for armor penetration, and shows how much of the enemy's armor save this weapon will ignore. This can range from 0 to -4, and the lower the number, the better, as that's the penalty your opponent will suffer when they're trying to save damage from this weapon. D is damage, and shows exactly how much damage a single hit from this weapon will actually do. Damage relates to wounds. The damage is the amount of wounds it will remove from the enemy model. The abilities section lists any unusual or special abilities the weapon has. Until you're dealing with more advanced models, this will usually be blank. The War Gear options is the section that lets you customize your unit, showing you the various changes and alterations you can make to the models themselves and what they're equipped with. We discussed modelling to WYSIWYG standards in the last video. What you see is what you get, and mentions how you don't have to follow this. If you have 10 marine models and you want to give one a special or heavy weapon, you don't have to have a model physically glued holding one. Just remember which model it is that has the weapon and what it does, and let your opponent know that you're doing this. The Abilities section lists any special rules you'll need to be aware of, and if the rule is a common or popular rule, which page of the rulebook you can find the full explanation on. Faction keywords are special connections that apply across armies within the same faction, the Imperium of Man, Xenos, or Chaos, and can be used later to link battle-forged armies together. Regular keywords are more specific and let you know the exact words this unit must be described as. These will relate to certain rules later on. And that is a datasheet. Now, no matter how complex a datasheet looks, for example, here's the datasheet for a veteran squad of Deathwatch, the army I play as. You'll notice it's much more complex and there's much more to it, but it's not actually any more complicated than the one we've just looked at. All the information is arranged the same, and everything follows the same patterns and rules. Now you know the basics of reading a datasheet, what the information is, and if in the future someone says to you, "Hey, what's your Space Marine's toughness?" you'll know exactly where to find that specific number. In the next video, we'll look at building an army, the points cost of it, and what a battle-forged army is, and why you might want to build one, because of the incredibly useful command points. Thank you very much for your time as usual. If you have any questions or feedback, leave them in a comment down below. If you want to chat to me live, you can come and say hello on Discord, or join us on Twitch at twitch.tv/Josh Strife Hayes. The Discord link is in the description of this video. Thanks for your time, and have a great day.